In a land bathed in golden sunlight, where rolling green hills met the endless blue sky, lived a man named Alara. He wasn't born into wealth, but from a young age, he had a fire in his belly, a relentless drive to build a life of comfort and security. He started with a small patch of land, working from dawn till dusk, his hands calloused, his back aching, but his spirit unbroken. Every sunrise was a new promise, every sunset a mark of progress. Years turned into a decade, and Alara's hard work bore fruit. His single field multiplied, stretching as far as the eye could see. His small barn grew into a complex of massive storehouses. He was no longer just a farmer. He was a magnate, a man whose name was whispered with a mix of awe and envy. His harvests were legendary, overflowing his granaries year after year. He had more than he could ever need, more than his children or their children could ever use. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Alara stood on a hill overlooking his vast estate. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the tall trees, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of the earth. He looked at his full barns, his healthy livestock, and the sprawling fields of golden wheat swaying like a gentle ocean. A deep sense of satisfaction washed over him. He had done it. He had conquered poverty and built an empire from dust. He thought to himself, "I have worked so hard. I have gathered so much. What shall I do? My barns are too small to hold all this abundance." A wide smile spread across his face as a grand idea took shape in his mind. "This is what I will do," he declared to the twilight sky. "I will tear down my old barns and build bigger ones. Yes, much bigger. Then I will have room for all my grain and all my goods." The thought filled him with an intoxicating excitement. He pictured the new structures, towering and magnificent, symbols of his success. He imagined himself walking through them, the scent of grain filling the air, a king in his own kingdom. And after that, he mused, his voice filled with contentment, "I will finally say to myself, Alara, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." He envisioned a future of endless feasts, fine wines, and carefree days. No more waking before the sun, no more toiling under its scorching heat. He had earned his rest, he had secured his future. He felt invincible, the master of his own destiny. The world was his, and he had paid the price for it with his own sweat and toil. What could possibly go wrong? His plan was flawless, his future, a guaranteed paradise of his own making. That very night, as the moon cast long shadows across his fields and a profound silence fell over the land, a strange and unsettling feeling began to creep into Alara's heart. He was in his lavish home, surrounded by every comfort he had ever dreamed of, yet a deep, hollow emptiness echoed within him. It was a feeling he couldn't quite name, a cold whisper that his grand plans couldn't silence. He tossed and turned in his bed, the image of his new, bigger barns replaying in his mind, but now the image felt different. The towering structures seemed less like monuments to his success and more like giant, empty tombs. The joy and satisfaction he had felt just hours before had vanished, replaced by annoying anxiety. He tried to brush it off, telling himself it was just the fatigue of a long day, the excitement of his new project. But the feeling persisted, a cold hand gripping his soul. He thought of all the years he had spent accumulating his wealth. He remembered the faces of his neighbors, some of whom struggled to make ends meet. He recalled the traveling merchants who spoke of distant lands plagued by famine. He had always seen their struggles as separate from his own life, a world away from his fortress of abundance. He had a family, but had he truly been present for them? Or was he always just one more harvest, one more deal away from being satisfied? The faces of his workers flickered in his mind, men and women who labored in his fields for a modest wage, whose lives were a world apart from the one he planned for himself. Had he ever truly seen them, not as tools for his ambition, but as people with their own hopes and fears? He had given them work, yes, but had he ever offered a helping hand, a share of his overwhelming surplus, or even a moment of genuine connection. A voice, not his own, seemed to echo in the stillness of the room, a question that cut through all his self-congratulations. "You fool, this very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" The words were not spoken aloud, but they resonated in his very being, shaking him to his core. A sudden, chilling realization dawned on him. All his plans, all his ambitions were for a future that was never guaranteed. He had spent his entire life storing up treasures for himself on earth, building an earthly kingdom, but he had invested nothing in eternity. He had focused so much on the what, the barns, the grain, the goods, that he had completely forgotten the why. What was the purpose of it all? He had planned to eat, drink, and be merry, but he was not merry. He was terrified. In his relentless pursuit of earthly security, he had built a prison of possessions, a fortress that isolated him not just from others, but from the very essence of a meaningful life. He had become rich in things, but was utterly bankrupt in soul. The wealth he had so carefully accumulated now seemed like a pile of dust. The bigger barns he planned to build felt like a monument to his own foolishness. He had treated his life as his own, to be spent as he pleased, forgetting that it was a gift, a temporary trust. He saw with painful clarity that true wealth isn't what you keep, but what you give away. It's not found in barns, but in relationships. It's not measured in gold, but in generosity, compassion, and love. As the first light of dawn began to break, a new understanding settled in Alara's heart. He realized the greatest treasure he could ever possess was not in his fields or his storehouses, but in a heart that was rich toward God and generous toward others. The story of the rich fool serves as a timeless reminder for all of us. Don't be so busy making a living that you forget to make a life. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and yet lose his own soul? Let's build our lives on a foundation that lasts, storing up treasures not on earth, where they can be lost, but in heaven, where they last forever. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that inspires.